Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to the second part of the Great Power Rivalry series, in which we are talking to Theo A-Mullis, who is a former British police officer. And my main channel is Soldier Speak, so he is a soldier of law, but he's turned a journalist like me, and he's a war correspondent who's covering Ukraine, covering Europe. He travels extensively, and he challenges the mainstream media narrative and presents on-ground reporting. If you've gone through the part one, you must have seen the way he challenged the field marshal of the UK, and he presented a perspective from ground. So in part two, we are going to discuss regarding the Ukraine war, that how come the Pakistani military junta is benefiting from providing ammunition to the Ukraine war, and the dictators in Pakistan are able to suppress democracy because of Ukraine war and because of the influence they have got and the leverage they have got by providing ammunition to the Ukraine war. We will discuss that in detail, and then we are also going to discuss that the Indian oil purchase from Russia, how it is impacting India's relation with the US and with West, and the shift in the geopolitical shift in Indian politics, Indian geopolitics, Indian foreign policy towards Russia as a result of American sanctions, tariffs, because and the pretext or the excuse for those tariffs are being given as India buying the Russian oil, and that has made, evidently, allegedly made President Trump take a U-turn on decades-old policy of siding, strategically supporting India as a counterweight to China in the context of great power rivalry. This is a great shift where US president within days have shifted that policy by supporting Pakistani generals and the Pakistani military regime. He has effectively alienated the biggest democracy of the world. And why is that going on? There is no better man to discuss it than Theo A-Mullis, and he runs his own YouTube channel, which is called Dictators v Democrats. His link can be seen below, and I'll request you all to join it. So, Theo, jumping straight away to the brass tacks. Firstly, tell me the leverage which the Pakistani military junta and the generals are attaining because of providing ammunition to the Ukraine war, and the way it is affecting democracy in the country, and the way it is giving them geopolitical relevance. What do you have to say about that, and what is your report on that?
Well, the leverage is significant because Europe has made a mistake in the past 20, 30 years, 35 years. After the fall of the Soviet Union, Europe believed that Russia was going to join the global trading order and essentially be reasonable. So Europe thought, hey, you know what we don't need to do anymore? We don't need to have enormous tank battalions. We've got the Americans, they're not going to go anywhere. We can roll back on all of this. We can assist the Americans where they want with small expeditionary militaries. We'll keep a military industrial complex, but it will keep it small and high tech and for the export market mostly, right? And Europe's mistake in doing that and failing to realize that the peace dividend, which a lot of international relations theorists like to call it, was in fact a mistake. It was a lie. It wasn't true. Has opened the door for Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2014. Let's not forget, to Ukrainians, this war started in 2014. Russia's invasion of Georgia, Russia's massacres in the Caucasus, in Chechnya. And now Ukraine has basically taught Europe that, oh dear, we were wrong. We need some weapons. We need them fast. And who makes them? We'll buy from anybody. We don't care what kind of country you are. We need things that go bang. We need to send them to Ukraine. So Pakistan makes a lot of things that go bang.
Yeah.
And Europe is not in a position, it feels, to be able to ask too many questions or now criticize a country which it is in a fairly big way relying upon, because Ukraine's war, Ukraine sits, it is the fortress for Europe, because we've seen what happens when the Russians take a town. I've been to sites of mass graves in Ukraine, and a lot of those graves, I'm afraid to say, were quite small. And Europe knows now, finally, that it has to defend itself, and it is not in a position to. So while it is desperately trying to build its own factories to push out the kind of things it thinks it needs, like artillery shells and such, for now, it is having to rely on countries like Pakistan and another country, South Korea, to provide these kind of things, because we don't have the facilities. We certainly have the technological know-how, because the European arms industry never went away, but it was always small scale and for exports or small expeditionary armies. And that mistake is costing us in our ethics now, having to support a regime we wouldn't want to.
Thank you for acknowledging, because that is, but it is not only affecting your ethics, but it is also affecting the people of Pakistan, who has voted for the leader Imran Khan, who is in jail right now, and the military is able to get away with it, irrespective of the Commonwealth Commission election observation mission noting that there have been mass-scale election rigging. But the report was suppressed because of this leverage which we were talking about by the British establishment. And the European Union report is still not issued. Even the Commonwealth report was issued by a whistleblower. And the European Union is also not issuing the detailed report because they're afraid that the Pakistani ammunition supply would stop. So yeah, definitely, it is a question of ethics, but it is also a question of human rights and misery faced by 250 million people of Pakistan. So moving to billion plus people in India, right across the border, who are also directly affected by this leverage of the Pakistani military generals on President Trump. The way there is in the context of the Great Power Rivalry, there is a sudden, unexpected shockwave where the U.S. policy of supporting India as a counterweight to China has been almost reversed overnight, with President Trump has imposed tariffs on India, and he is supporting Pakistan quite openly. And the way Pakistani, allegedly puppet prime minister and the field marshal Asim Munir is, appeasing President Trump. They understand. And in the last program, you said, well, this is the way it's going to be for the next 3 years. So get used to it. All right, fine, we'll get used to it. But we need to speak the truth. All right. But how come this, in the geopolitical context, is India buying Russian oil such a big deal that you have to reverse the geopolitical policy of the Western world led by the US almost 180 degrees? Obviously, the Indians are now, they've enhanced communication with Russia, and they're going in. They're also talking to the Chinese. They're talking to Beijing as well. So everything has been, it's a topsy-turvy situation in geopolitics in the context of Great Power Rivalry. Now, what do you have to say about India getting oil from Russia? What is your point of view, and what is your reporting about that, Theo?
So there's something to be said for strategic ambiguity, right? Don't let your enemies know really what you're thinking. What we're seeing from the United States isn't that, it's strategic schizophrenia. India was basically told under the previous administration, we know you need oil, Russian oil is right there, you can keep buying it, and we're going to force the Russians to sell it to you at a discount. And that discount is significant, up to 5% per barrel. Now, that's money that the Russians are not getting. That's going to help the Indian economy, of course, because they can buy oil at a discounted rate. And the idea behind that was quite clever. The Russians are going to keep selling oil. All of the Western world could say, no more oil or natural gas from Russia at all. And Russia, it could just say, okay, well, we'll just sell to India and China. And if we try to pressure the Indians and the Chinese, say, hey, don't buy Russian oil, well, we're not going to succeed, because they've got to buy it from somewhere. Are they going to buy it from the Americans? I mean, there's certainly an argument, if the Americans want to sell the Indians oil at a rate that would match the ones they're getting from the Russians, there's definitely an argument there. Is Trump going to do that? No. So you either let the Indians buy Russian oil at this discounted rate, or try to stop them and they buy it anyway, but perhaps at the market rate, because Russian oil is going to increase its flow out through India and China. Whereas now, under the previous thing, basically everybody except the Russians are happy about it, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind
Yeah.
of what we want. So it's
Yeah.
it's a huge mistake, because it's telling the Indians, well, the Indians were going along with what the Biden administration wanted, and they were happy about it because they're getting oil at a discount rate. And now the Trump administration comes along and says, hey, what the hell are you doing buying any Russian oil? And they're like,
Mm.
well, we're doing what you suggested, and it seems to be working out. So it's a huge mistake. And it's another example of President Trump having absolutely no mind for geopolitics, having no geopolitical strategy whatsoever,
Mm.
and making mistakes which are going to ripple down into the next administration and have an effect on his policy goals. But his policy goals, I don't quite know what they are. He wants a Nobel Peace Prize, but he's not going to get one. Certainly not at this rate.
Yeah. But there are people who think that he's very business minded, and he knows the art of making a deal. Do you think he's going to make a deal like this with India?
The art of making a deal. He's been bankrupt like 3 times. Is he going to make a deal with India? I mean, a deal was already made with India, and it was working. It was working fine. India, you buy Russian oil at a 5% discount. The Russians are very unhappy about it. You're happy. We're happy because they're unhappy. That was fine. Right. Everybody was okay with that. And
but
he wants to upend it.
Yeah, but you did this research and you sent it to me earlier. You know, I mean, India is not the only one buying the Russian oil. There are other countries as well. So why are you not, this is what the trends of the total export revenue, Russia's fossil fuel export revenue. Well, this export revenue is allegedly fueling the Russian war in Ukraine. All right, fine. Then going to the second part, who bought Russia's fossil fuels after the European Union's ban? China is number 1. All right. Then it is India. Then European Union is still there, and Turkey is still there. All right. And there are a number of other countries. Are they facing the same kind of sanctions then?
Yeah. I mean, China is facing a variety of different sanctions, but Trump knows that he can't sanction China. He can try to start a trade. I mean, he can sanction China, but he can't win this tariff nonsense with the Chinese. They're too big. And the Chinese don't want to start it because the Chinese would rather, at the moment, just trade, although they're beginning to move away from the trading order and onto conquest and all that sort of thing, which is unhealthy for everybody. But yeah, the Europeans should certainly stop buying Russian oil and Russian LNG. But again, this mistake I mentioned earlier, Europe thought that Russia had joined the trading order and thought that a way to keep Russia from doing anything silly was to integrate them and to integrate the economy. Okay, we'll buy all of your gas and stuff, and you won't want to mess around because, we'll stop buying your gas. But then they stopped building nuclear facilities like in Germany, and they realized, oh, wait, hang on a minute, if we stop buying Russian gas, then the price of energy for Europe will spike enormously. Another mistake that Europe made. And Europe is learning, though. The numbers are going down significantly for gas and LNG, gas and oil imports from Russia. And Europe can go to other markets and should, because this is a matter of primarily Europe's security.
Yeah, so Theo, about the gas Nord Stream pipeline blowing up out of the blue, and still the pipeline gas consumer of Russian fossil fuel is even more than China. It is the EU who's getting the pipeline gas, right? So what is the alternative then?
The alternative is a project that's going to take a while, basically.
All right, so that's why
and it should have been done a long time ago.
All right, so oil products, Turkey is getting the maximum of them, and then Brazil, and of course India is there, and then Saudi Arabia is there, and the UAE is there, Libya is there. No, these are close American allies. Do you really think that singling out India is going to, as you've already said, that it's not going to help President Trump or the Western policy very much? So final words on this topic, Theo.
India is an enormous, massive economy and a growing economy. And I would much rather have India completely and nicely integrated into the global trading order. I'd rather it be sort of a healthy democracy, and I'm worried about a lot of things that are happening under Modi. I think he's slipping, but I'd much rather keep India on side, and I'd much rather keep the Indian economy growing. And I don't think it's healthy for the United States to get into these spats where the deal had been working previously. We can undermine the Russian oil economy, and the Ukrainians, as we spoke about in the previous conversation, are doing a very, very good job of it. And that's their theory of victory. So we want to keep the Russians. They're going to get money from oil anyway, and we want to keep them getting as little as possible. And so, okay, they sell to the Indians at a discounted rate. They're going to sell to the Indians anyway. We can't get really the Indians to stop. So we come to a deal. And a deal was in place, and Trump's thrown it away because he's actually a very bad businessman.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. This was Theo A-Mullis reporting from on ground, the war correspondent, and he'll keep on joining us. But he brings these very interesting and very powerful people, and I also sometimes I get jealous that, well, he's getting all these top generals, because the reason is that he's traveling to all these conflict zones, especially in Ukraine, and he's meeting those people. He did an interview with General Petraeus, and then he did the interview with very influential figures, people. He did an interview with the imams of Ukraine as well. So he knows his stuff, and he knows he's an expert there. So we're going to bank upon his expertise. But I would once again recommend you to join his YouTube channel, Dictators v Democrats. It has been on the scroll throughout the program, and you can still see it down there. And we would, again, if you want Theo to come back, and if you've got questions for him, well, leave them in the comments. He will read it, and then we will again invite him on Soldier Speaks English channel and this format, the Great Power Rivalry. Thank you so very much, Theo. God bless.
Thank you very much indeed. God bless.